Chapter 67.1. The ballista had good penetrating power but was quite slow to reload compared to a bow. Yet, it was frequently used due to its ease of use. It took far less time to master than a bow. But it wouldn't hurt to learn the bow as well. Groups like Johann's, which moved around in small numbers, benefited from having a variety of skills. Johann called Gerdolf, who was swinging his sword in the distance. Gerdolf! Stop swinging your sword and come try shooting a bow. Gerdolf, though reluctant, came over without complaining and took the bow. This was one of Gerdolf's strengths. Practicing with the bow? Suitignim. Are you all right? Yes. I feel magical energy from that bow. At Suitlg's words, Marco blushed and replied. Yes. My master who gave me this said that as a knight, one must be honorable to pierce the target accurately. It seems to be made from winter-cut vermilion wood mixed with alchemical ingredients I'm not familiar with. Quite a well-crafted piece. Suitlg was intrigued but showed no further curiosity. The mystery of the arrow flying accurately with more honor was not of interest to Suitlg. Natural talent is essential for outstanding archers, but can it be taught? Better to shoot a bow than do nothing, right? Well, that's true too. Johann asked the mercenaries if they could shoot a bow. Only 2 or 3 knew how. Khan, did you use a bow too? Learned it from my old man when I was young. For secretly hunting wild animals. Goran and Khan were mercenaries who had joined the group unexpectedly, thanks to Johann's sudden invitation during a restful moment. Johann's decision to take them to Duke Brudu's domain was unexpected, especially considering there were more experienced soldiers available. Goran was slightly worried, but the anticipated conflict did not occur. Johann's selected mercenaries were all tight-lipped and loyal, not the type to belittle or quarrel with unfamiliar faces. While the mercenaries and knights were practicing with bows, Suitlg spoke up. Anyway, I feel somewhat guilty. We could have traveled more comfortably. Noble travels usually followed ancient empire roads or at least connected towns and cities. There was no need for nobles to camp outdoors. However, the current party was moving along a river, necessitating camping outdoors for a few days. It's not a problem. Wizardnim. The knight spoke as if it didn't bother them. Unless they were high-ranking nobles, all of them were knights from poor families. They were very accustomed to sleeping outdoors, exposed to the dew. This was even more true for mercenaries. What are you doing? The group was puzzled by the sight of a person running towards them, their face flushed with anger. Since the person was alone and without any significant armament, none of them were tense. Do you know where you are? Isn't this the land of the Balpa family? The gamekeeper flinched at Johann's response, which was delivered without a change in expression. From his accent, it seemed he might be a noble. Excuse me, but where are you from? From the Jarpen family. And this person is of the bloodline of the Abner family. I'm so sorry. This lowly one has committed a crime worthy of death. The gamekeeper prostrated himself. He had thought these rowdy mercenaries, shooting their bows, were poaching in the Lord's forest. Why are such esteemed individuals here? Would a knight seek comfort? Marco answered on their behalf. The other knights nodded in agreement. I will guide you to the Lord. The knights looked troubled. Rejecting such an offer could be seen as an insult. Suitlg said it was fine. It's not necessary to stay by the river. Moving to a more comfortable location to receive hospitality doesn't seem bad after we've been here long enough. Chapter 67.2. Do you know much about the Balpa family? No. All I know is that they're a minor house with just a feudal lord title. Compared to the Abner or Jarpen families, they are quite modest. It was a small house similar to Johann's Eight's family. Still, their fiefdom seemed to be in a slightly better condition. It's only natural to want to treat someone well when you hear the names Abner or Jarpen. Treating guests well was both a duty and an honor for the nobility, especially if the guests were of high status. Of course, with that hospitality often came a few favors in return. I just hope I don't end up owing any favors. Why? It would be the people of Abner or Jarpen who'd be in trouble, not you. At Suitlg's words, Johann realized something. He thought about it and realized he was not in any trouble here. He could just relax and enjoy himself. Johann shifted his mindset from being the leader of the group to simply enjoying the moment. The feudal lord's manor wasn't very large, but it was cozy and warm, and the Balpa family's lord was a cheerful dwarf. Short with a lively voice, he laughed and celebrated their victory. To defeat the Marquis army. That Marquis Crucho's army. Surely the Abner family is under divine protection. Hava hava. Marco and the other knights seated there didn't know how to react and were sweating nervously. Actually, Sir Johann here played a major role in that battle. He was at the forefront, defeating the knights of the Marquis. The feudal lord was surprised upon hearing this. He knew the names of the Abner and Jarpen families, but Johann's name was new to him. But people from the Jarpen family wouldn't lie. Surprised, the lord asked, "To accomplish such feats at your age is truly remarkable. You must be blessed by the gods. If only my children could achieve half as much." "Are your children knights?" "Yes." From the lord's response, it seemed his second and third children were knights. The first child had to continue the family line, so the second and subsequent children had to find their own paths. The two chose to be knights rather than scribes or priests. Could they perhaps serve as knights in the Abner family? PFF. Stephen, who was sipping a fine beer, choked. Though a child of the family, the rights varied from one house to another. And Stephen wasn't very prominent in his house. A recommendation from him here would have made Ulrika very happy. I'm sorry. I don't have such authority. That's unfortunate. Can't be helped, I suppose. The lord didn't seem to have been seriously expecting a positive response. When Stephen humbly declined, the lord seemed to take a liking to his modesty. It was unusual for an Abner family member to be so humble. Karamaf, who had been gnawing on a chunk of meat in a corner, suddenly raised his head and growled menacingly, causing the servants to step back in alarm. "What's the matter? Why is he acting like that?" Johann was also puzzled. They checked just in case, but the feudal lord had not ambushed the soldiers or done anything like that. Suitg scolded for having unnecessary suspicions. Is there a monster roaming around the feudal lord's estate? This wolf wouldn't act like this without a reason. For a moment, the face of the feudal lord darkened. But it soon returned to normal. The feudal lord, waving his hand, said, "What are you saying? If that were the case, all the serfs would have run away. True, it's rare for monsters to come close to a town where people live." After that, Karamaf didn't bark anymore. Johann thoroughly enjoyed the meal favored by the dwarfs. The pork sausage made by removing the tendons was delicious, and the cabbage cooked with oil and wine was also good. There was certainly an old-fashioned uniqueness, different from what he had eaten elsewhere. The meal ended pleasantly, except for the feudal lord subtly suggesting a marriage with a relative to Stephen. "Are you sleeping?" "No, I am not." "I thought so." "Planning a night walk?" "Yes." "Let's go together." Suitg was someone who couldn't overlook a mystery. And Johann was more wary than curious. If Karamaf barked, there must be a reason worth checking out. Do you think the feudal lord has some ulterior motive? It doesn't seem so. The beer tasted good. I'm speaking seriously. So am I. The beer seemed home-brewed by the family, too rough and unrefined for a dwarf with a nasty temper. Suitg could read many things from water. Johann was amazed. Reading a person through the taste of beer. "Here, take this silver-plated longsword, just in case. The monsters that appear at night are mostly evil. My slaves don't react as sharply as you, so be careful. Karamaf is with me, so it's fine." Suitg's slaves were skilled in swordsmanship but somewhat blunt in instinct due to some aspects of their personality being muted. "Should we call the other knights? The more we are, the more likely we'll be noticed. It's not a big issue if we're caught, but it's embarrassing, so keep your voice down. If it's a monster, I hope it's useful. For experiments. The rarer the materials, the better. Really, aren't you too relaxed?" Johann had come out to check preemptively for an attack, but Suitg had other thoughts. Monsters found across the empire were a secret among wizards. Full of mysteries and secrets. If we find something useful, I'll definitely share with you, so do search. Thank you. I will search diligently. Johann remembered his time in his former fiefdom. Roaming quiet towns at night. It was different then. Why didn't the feudal lord tell us? Your turn to guess. Maybe it's about saving face. Good reason. Especially embarrassing in front of a renowned Western feudal family, not being able to deal with a monster. But it's still strange. Why not ask for help on such an occasion? Suitlig nodded. Johann was seeing it right. It was more beneficial to ask for help when such knights were present. So, your conclusion? Maybe the feudal lord is involved in the issue. Sometimes, not just sometimes, often I think. You would have done well as a scribe. Why didn't you go to college, even if not a priest? Thank you for the compliment. Unlike other knights, Johann could reason logically. To Suitlig, it was merely fascinating. Suddenly, the air turned cold, a different chill from winters. Karamaf started scratching the ground. Johann quickly came to his senses and looked ahead. With glowing blue eyes, a knight stood in front of them. The chainmail was torn, and the attached metal plates were shattered, almost like a corpse. But the intimidation it radiated was more substantial and unpleasant than a living knight. Suitlig exclaimed in astonishment. Death Knight! When a person dies harboring intense resentment, they become undead. And a knight, being stronger than an ordinary person, can harbor even more intense resentment in death. Such a knight, unable to shake off their attachments, wandering as an undead, was called a Death Knight. A Death Knight bringing death to the living. Suitlig instinctively checked the position of the moon. Death Knights couldn't roam once the sun rose. It came out too early. Could the magic he currently possessed be enough to defeat this Death Knight? Meanwhile, Johann carefully observed the knight's ears. Fortunately, it wasn't an elf. Thought it was a Karamaf. Since it wasn't far from the dead forest, where Karamaf died, he was honestly a bit startled. But if it wasn't, it didn't matter. Death Knight? After all, it had a physical form. Wouldn't it break apart if beaten enough? Dash. Chapter 68. Do not attack. Suitlig urgently exclaimed upon seeing the Death Knight speak. Fortunately, it seemed this undead was not one to attack just anyone. He clearly had a specific purpose. Johann realized the situation had become complicated. A townsman could have sincerely answered. But what about Johann? He instinctively felt it. This Death Knight would detect a lie. Johann sighed deeply and picked up his mace and shield. If you're a knight, figure it out with your strength. Dash! What are you doing? Suitlig exclaimed in shock. Even with boiling blood, it was audacious to pick a fight with a Death Knight. Is there anything to be cautious about when dealing with him? Do not touch his weapon. The necromantic poison is so potent it rots flesh and crumbles bones. The Death Knight lunged, his swordsmanship from life ingrained in his movements. The rusted longsword clashed with the shield. Despite being damaged, the weapon exerted immense pressure. A black trace, writhing as if alive, etched itself onto the shield amidst the hissing sound. Johann's shield was no ordinary one. Although a heater shield in shape, its material was unique. Johann's shield was made by melting metal in its entirety. It was rare to use solid metal for shields. Thick wood was sufficient for defense, and metal made them too heavy. No matter how sturdy, if the bearer tired quickly, it was pointless. But for Johann, such weight was insignificant. That's why he chose a metal shield when receiving one from Count Jarpen. That choice was now saving his life. The Death Knight attacked relentlessly. If he were alive, he would have stopped for breath and fatigue, but the undead knight had no such limitations. The onslaught continued. But a single counterattack was enough. Blocking with his shield and gathering strength, Johann fiercely targeted the knight's flank. The mace struck like a battering ram. With a terrifying sound, the knight was flung aside. Are you all right? Are you addressing me, or him? Obviously you. I'm fine. Though the shield's surface was ruined, it remained intact. Unfortunately, it seemed the Death Knight was similarly undeterred. Any normal person would have been shattered, yet he attempted to rise again. What does Karamaf have to do with you? Dash. Who are you? Your family name? As they conversed, the Death Knight stood and armed himself. Suitlig shouted to the knight. The dead should return to the realm of the dead. What lingering attachment do you have to torment the living? Dash. I swear on the Eipel River, I do not know his whereabouts. Instead of answering, Johann returned the mace. The Death Knight was struck and flew backwards again. Suitlig exclaimed in astonishment. What are you doing? It's not enough to unleash his stupidity. Suitignim. Karamaf has been dead for a long time. That sword was Karamaf's sword. No wonder. Did you know? No. I just suspected it. The sword Johann had drawn was unmistakably not an ordinary one. The strong magic emanating from the metal seemed to be unique. Danu's steel sword. For a wandering knight to possess a famous sword dating back to the ancient empire era. Initially, it seemed like an inheritance, but upon further thought, that was implausible. It was not a sword to be secretly passed down within a humble family. Either found in a ruin by chance, or acquired from someone. And that someone was Karamaf. Honestly, even Suitlug was surprised. Karamaf, known for wearing a full plate armor made by dwarfs, was hard to injure on the battlefield. How was he defeated? Suitlugnim, how do you think he will react if we tell him the truth? I thought he would just pass by if you said you didn't know, but now, even I am not sure. Purpose-driven undead often ignore those unrelated to their objectives. The townspeople were unharmed probably because they knew nothing about Karamaf. But Johann, the one who defeated Karamaf, how would the opponent react? I killed Karamaf. It was a fair duel. Johann drew the seal retriever. The blade flickered seductively, absorbing the faint moonlight. The night halted in its light. Karamaf was defeated by me, and his sword is now mine. There's no reason for you to remain. Stand down. The figure of the knight flickered, then began to fade and lose form. The voice vanished, the glow in the eyes disappeared, and eventually, it turned into black smoke, melting into the darkness. Is it over? You, surprisingly, might have a talent for magic. Suitlug muttered in astonishment. Magic wasn't about forcibly knocking down with strength, but about making the opponent retreat with the power contained in words. In Johann's current form, glimpses of such magic could be seen. What? Are you saying that because of how I wield the mace? What kind of nonsense is that? I thought defeating the Death Knight with a regular mace was magical. That's indeed remarkable but not magic. Just like you don't call launching stones with a catapult magic. Suitlug began to get slightly confused in his explanation. Johann's strength, in fact, was somewhat magical. I meant the power of words you used to defeat the Death Knight. Without strong intent, undead can't be defeated by words alone. Johann thought so but didn't say it to Suitlug, not wanting to be ridiculed for ignorance. Can I learn magic too? Please don't ask other wizards so casually as if it's as easy as learning archery. You never know what offense it might cause. I'm just speaking comfortably with Suitlugnim. You need to ask more challenging questions. You might be able to learn magic. But that doesn't mean it's not impossible, nor does it mean you can use magic. First of all, you're not particularly interested in mysteries. Suitlug carefully scraped off the black powder left in the spot where the Death Knight was and put it in his pocket. It seemed to be an important enough task to do himself rather than having a slave do it. You should have brought your slave with you. Are you talking about Jeffrey? He's meticulous and smart. Those are virtues my slaves don't exhibit. Thanks to taking care of Suitlug during Johann's absence, the wizard had come to think highly of Jeffrey. As a merchant who had traveled far and wide, he was adept in such matters. Back to the topic of magic, if you want to wield it, you need to be interested in some mystery and unravel its secrets. Like I did with the secret of the Ipel River. I can't explain it even if I want to. Even if I did, you wouldn't understand. When I was young, I spent months with my master just observing the surface of the Ipel River. During the day, I immersed myself in the river, and at night, I watched the moonlight on its surface. Then, the river began to whisper to me. Do you think you can do the same? Johann shook his head. It made sense why Suitlug had scoffed at the idea of a knight learning magic. A knight chases honor and desire, not the hidden mysteries of the world. But don't give up too easily. You might find yourself interested in some mystery someday. There's no mystery in swordsmanship or archery. Enough of the nonsense. Let's go inside. They'll be suspicious. Johann and Suitlug pondered how to deal with the incident that happened at night. It was a valid point. Johann decided to take a direct approach. Lord, last night I saw a Death Knight roaming your fiefdom. The feudal lord appeared perplexed by the words brought up by Johann and Suitlug, who came alone. What do you mean by that? A wandering undead in the town can cause harm at any moment. It might seem tame now, but it could turn violent the next day. To hide such information while an undead lurks in the town. Aren't you ashamed of your honor? Suitlug's reprimand darkened the feudal lord's face. He spoke with a heavy heart. As a feudal lord, I have no intention of shirking my responsibility. I will deal with it somehow. You don't have to worry about that. I have already defeated it. Upon hearing Johann's words, the feudal lord was speechless and stared at Johann. Suitlug added firmly. I saw it with my own eyes. It's gone. How? With the valor of a knight and a bit of magic. At Suitlug's signal, Johann put down his shield. It bore the marks of dark resentment, clearly signs of a battle with the Death Knight. This knight had to risk his life due to your concealment of the truth. He deserves to know the truth. Please tell us, why was this Death Knight wandering around here? Suitlug's forceful voice stirred the feudal lord's heart. The sweating dwarf pondered for a long time before speaking. That knight was slain by me. Johann and Suitlug were both surprised by the unexpected confession. After Karamaf went missing, the emperor commanded the knights through letters to search for Karamaf. Sir Gerendel was one of them. He moved hastily, taking only a few subordinates, and during this, he visited the fiefdom of the Balpa family. However, the Balpa family held a blood feud against the emperor. If it were Johann, he would have prepared to flee without even eating a meal the moment he knew, but Gerendel was different. He requested hospitality as a guest, and from the moment the feudal lord accepted, Gerendel thought the lord would protect him according to tradition, regardless of any grudge. Of course, there are always those who break traditions. That was the feudal lord of the Balpa family. He poisoned the food and drink, killing Sir Gerendel and his subordinates. You've done a terrible thing. To break such a tradition. I know too. I know as well. But seeing that guy, daring to praise the emperor and Karamaf with his insolent mouth. The feudal lord bowed his head in silence. Having spilled the truth, it was an attitude of resigned acceptance. Suitlug nudged Johann. Dash? Indeed, they couldn't just leave the feudal lord like this. Johann organized his thoughts and then spoke. I will pretend I didn't see it. The feudal lord suddenly raised his head. The words from the young knight in front of him were unexpectedly surprising. Chapter 69.1. Suitlug also looked at Johann in surprise. He knew that Johann had quite a different mindset from an ordinary knight. Still, to say that he would overlook and move on from the actions of such a person. Yes. I don't think it's my place to say anything. I won't tell anyone your secret, so you don't need to be so distressed, feudal lord. Oh, no. The feudal lord, too, looked at Johann in disbelief. Are you really a knight? Shouldn't there be an outcry like? Or? Is that true? With such a blood feud, who am I to say anything? Judgment is solely for God to make, not for a knight like me. God was always a good excuse. Suitlug realized that Johann was just making excuses, but he didn't point it out. The undead have been dealt with by me and the philosopher. You need not worry anymore, feudal lord. Please live a life you won't be ashamed of before God from now on. Johann neatly concluded and stood up. There was no reason for Johann to accuse the other party with, especially since the deceased was also a knight of the emperor. And honestly, to Johann, the people here seem to lack tact too often, especially the nobles. The difference in values. They must believe it's okay to speak like that, but when you meet such an uncontrollable dwarf, it's over. Anyway, Johann didn't feel any particular emotion about the incident and rather thought of bestowing kindness on the feudal lord than blaming him. Who knows when he might receive gratitude in return? Sorry to interrupt your eloquent speech, but you can't just leave like that. Suitlug cleared his throat and then addressed the feudal lord. It was touching how the knight here forgave your actions and left them to God. However, it's not over yet, feudal lord. There must be a place where their bodies are buried. Please guide us there. While following a slave serving the feudal lord, Johann asked Suitlug. Why the corpse? If it's risen as undead, the grudge isn't ordinary. Besides, the feudal lord probably didn't handle the body properly to bury it. Suitlug's guess was correct. The body was buried under a secluded warehouse. It was in such a mess that it was barely recognizable. Johann dug up the ground himself and laid out the body. Suitlug asked cautiously. Shouldn't you have the slaves do this? Isn't it better not to do such things yourself? No, it isn't. That's why I did it myself. However, it was rare for a knight to do such work himself. Suitlik was grateful that the knight in front of him was easy to communicate with. Otherwise, it would have been much more troublesome. Suitlik sprinkled holy water and recited a prayer. Johann continued the prayer. Suitlik was knowledgeable in theology, and Johann had learned by observing a priest. Looks like it's done. Can we bury it now? No. Before burying, remove any belongings. It's troublesome if they are buried with possessions. This is to ease the deceased soul, so don't feel offended. Yes? Johann was already searching through the possessions. Suitlik nodded. Search thoroughly. There was no famous sword like that seal retriever from Sir Karamaf. Instead, a family crest ring that belonged to Sir Gerendel was found. It seemed like a pointless item to have, as it could only lead to misunderstandings, yet it was too precious to discard. Johann decided to return it to the family when the opportunity arose. If not, it couldn't be helped. This is an authorization from the Emperor. To gather troops in the city? Must have been urgent. The Emperor himself had troops under his direct command, but the forces brought by his subordinate lords were also important. The great feudal lords could employ renowned mercenary captains, but further down the ranks, people were more concerned with earning their keep than hiring mercenaries. In such cases, one had to take action personally. This recruitment authorization was used to travel around towns and cities, drawing in mercenaries and young people to take with them. With the Emperor's seal on it, a good talker could gather many for a small fee. But why keep that? How can I throw it away with the Emperor's seal? That would be disrespectful. Suitlik almost hit him but restrained himself. Karamaf was also killed, and there was nothing else significant in the rest of the belongings. Johann found a palm-sized blue glass sphere in the knight's pocket. The glass was of high quality, which puzzled Johann. Where was that? In this man's pocket. Him? That can't be. Suitlik took the glass ball almost snatchingly and checked it again. This is an item that only a wizard can use. Do you know its name? I don't know what it does. It looks like a ball made of glass. This is a fire goblet. The fire goblet. Literally, a goblet that holds fire. Johann was puzzled by the incongruous term. It's neither fire nor a goblet. You light a fire inside this goblet. That's why it's called a fire goblet. An artifact used by wizards of the ancient empire, and to see it here. Is it expensive? Not as expensive as your sword, but some nobles who fancy it do exist. It's an ancient empire artifact, after all. Suitlik looked at the fire goblet again as if it was still fascinating. How do you put fire in it? You can do it the usual way. The fire needs to be lit inside a sealed ball, so it's only possible with magic. That's why it's an item for wizards. Wizards, they seem to be quite troublesome people. There is indeed a bit of that vibe. Even in such a simple object, the pride of wizards was evident. The pride that only those who knew the mysteries and secrets could handle it. Why don't you try lighting it? I can do it. What? Chapter 69.2. I don't know how to handle fire. And even if I did, it's not an item to be used carelessly. This fire goblet is made in pairs. If you light one goblet, the other lights up too. Johann quickly realized the value of the item. It was like a small and convenient beacon. Such a powerful magical tool in the hands of this knight. Was it bestowed by the Emperor? Doesn't seem likely. I think it was given by a wizard close to the Emperor. Some powerful wizards use knights for their purposes. Probably given for communication. Why are you looking at me like that? Nothing. So, this item is then. Johann's face hardened. Regardless of which wizard near the Emperor it was, being close to the Emperor meant they were a powerful wizard. Can it be traced? Well, I haven't used it. Maybe it can be traced by the difference when moving away or closer. Then we shouldn't be discussing this leisurely. Don't worry. Whoever gave this, if they want to find it, they'd have to search extensively. But the Emperor's army hasn't come near here. Even a great wizard would just be causing trouble. Suitlik smiled slyly and began to wrap the fire goblet in a purple cloth with a pattern. Good for whoever. I never thought I'd come across something like this here. You said you couldn't use it yourself, Suitlignim? I'll give it to another wizard who can use it. A good trade, and I can pay off the debt I owe you. Johann thought to himself. Is it all right to trade such a suspicious item with hidden motives? Of course, it was good for Johann. What Johann didn't know was that deceiving others without lying was almost routine among wizards. Being able to deceive without telling lies was a skill in itself. What have you been up to since dawn? I don't think the feudal lord would have requested a duel. Marco asked with a curious expression. It seemed that Johann and Suetlik had been chatting with the feudal lord about this and that since early morning. He was asking how we might arrange a marriage with Stephen and a relative. Ah, so that's why he saw us off so kindly. Marco understood. Stephen, who had been listening, exclaimed in surprise. I have no intention of marrying a dwarf. Why not? Certainly, the Balpa family is smaller than the Abner family, but Sir Stephen, you are not the eldest either. Isn't it a good opportunity? Marco sincerely couldn't understand. If he were Stephen, he would have immediately accepted the feudal lord's proposal. Coming from a background of having nothing, he would definitely accept the chance to marry into a legitimate noble family, whether the other party was a dwarf, a centaur, or an orc. After all, isn't it about securing a fiefdom? And the dwarfs were renowned for their unity, helping each other even among different families. Even a minor family could connect with others. But she's a dwarf. Yes? I know she's a dwarf. Didn't I just say that? Stephen decided to keep quiet, feeling that anything more he said would only make him look foolish. Johann remembered what the feudal lord had given him before leaving. It was a knot made from a strand of a beard. Although Johann was uncertain about the effectiveness of the knot, the sincerity of the feudal lord was clear. There was a sense of accomplishment from fighting alongside Suetlik against the Death Knight that night. We should get moving. I have a friend to meet in the city of Weizen. Between the western and southern parts of the empire lay a vast forest, commonly known as the Black Forest. Full of dangers and mysteries, few chose to traverse it, opting instead to travel around it, either above or below. Johann had once cut through the forest to evade pursuers. And the city located on the path below the forest was Weizen, bustling due to its riverside location. A friend, you say? Is it a noble? I have no noble friends. They wouldn't consider me a friend, either. That's unfortunate. I consider Suetliknim a friend. Thank you. The friend I mentioned is a wizard. Johann was surprised. It was no wonder Suetlik knew other wizards. With all the exchanges I need to make, including with a wizard, I should visit my friend. They might have something useful. That sounds interesting. Don't get your hopes up too high. The treasures wizards possess often have little use for others. But regardless of Johann's expectations, others were excited. To travelers wandering the plains, visiting a city was always an anticipated event, especially as these mercenaries were well funded. Marco? Yes. Keep an eye on the mercenaries so they don't cause trouble in the city. Understood. Part of a knight's duty was to maintain discipline among mercenaries. Marco firmly resolved to monitor the mercenaries during their stay in the city to prevent any mischief. And Stephen? Who? Keep an eye on Stephen so he doesn't cause trouble. The mercenaries aren't fools, they'll manage on their own. Why yes. Marco was startled but nodded in agreement. Don't worry. There won't be time for mischief anyway. With the flags of the Abner and Jarpen families, do you think we'll have time to play around? The city's nobles will be lining up to meet us. Chapter 70.1. Suetlik's words were not wrong. The guards at the gate, upon seeing the flag, contacted the inside, and Johann's party was quickly allowed to enter. The nobles of the city were not strictly real nobility. Of course, there were those of true noble blood, but many were self-made families from the city. Their blood was not as blue as that of the true nobles. The relationship between the city nobility and the true nobility who owned fiefdoms was quite delicate. A relationship mixed with jealousy, admiration, and respect. Of course, this did not mean that families like Abner or Jarpen were not welcomed when they arrived, especially when they were gaining power in the West. As a result, Johann's party had to go on a mansion tour in succession. What are you drinking? Water of life. Alcohol? You just drank that and again? Him drinking water that sobers you up. I'm not as robust as you. Suetlik, having drunk too much, was protecting his body using expensive antidotes. In this world, the more lavish and debauched the hospitality, the more sincere it was considered. Hiring musicians, minstrels, jesters, and preparing spectacular entertainments was part of the preparation, but the basis of any banquet was food and drink. Luxurious food and quality alcohol upheld the city noble's dignity. Currently, Johan's party was indulging in food and drink at the mansion of a city noble whose name and family they barely remembered. Johan could handle strong grape wine poured down his throat, but not everyone else, especially not Suik. When will you visit the wizard friend? One must follow customs. At least until tomorrow, shouldn't we eat and drink? Suik said, wiping his mouth. Accepting only one person's hospitality and not another's could build unnecessary resentment. It was a noble's duty to joyously eat and drink when invited. Eating and drinking is fine, but I'm more curious about magic. You are quite unique. Perhaps, in such gatherings, being sober might be better than being drunk. Suik looked around. Except for Johan, almost all of the party members were heavily intoxicated, including Marco and the knights. Even the most honorable knights indulged in food and drink in such situations. Not enjoying oneself was considered odd. Heartily eating and drinking was also a way of proving a knight's prowess. Moreover, Marco and the knights, being from poor families, found such occasions even more delightful. But Suik was a wizard. Proving strength through eating and drinking didn't quite resonate with him. The glass of honor is empty. Why are you not refilling it? At the noble's shout, a servant hurriedly filled Johan's glass with grape wine to the brim, which Johan downed in one go. Cheers erupted from all around. Anyway, was what you just drank really wine, not water? Yes. Anyway, during our eating and drinking, I noticed some people giving us displeased looks. Shouldn't we be concerned about this? Weizen City was a free empire city. As a city granted freedom by the emperor's patent, it naturally had emperor faction forces. Even if the emperor was tyrannical, such forces didn't easily disappear. You noticed that while drinking? Impressive. But such people are everywhere, aren't they? They wouldn't dare do anything against custom in the city. Besides, now is not a good time for the emperor's faction to act out. The emperor's faction was suffering defeat in the west and attempting invasion in the south. Public opinion was not in favor of the emperor. Although the emperor's faction had many grievances against families like Abner or Jarpen, there was little they could do. Still, it wouldn't hurt to be cautious. He'll also inform the mercenaries in advance. Yes. Do that. Chapter 70.2. Synonym, we have arrived at the city. The knight spoke cautiously. Although all wizards were known to be quirky, the one they served, especially so. But there was no other choice. She was a wizard, almost a confidant of the emperor. Synonym, please be careful. The atmosphere in the city of Weizen is not good. I know. Synonym replied with a languid voice. She was a wizard, not a fool. She was far from those who couldn't read the atmosphere and flaunted their status. Now, revealing that they were part of the emperor's forces in the city of Weizen was not beneficial. Thus, the knights were in disguise, hiding their banners. It was dishonorable, but necessary. Why so discontent? Wasn't it your wish to seek Sir Gerendel? No, that's not it. Is that all the honor and camaraderie of knights amounts to? Perhaps I was mistaken. Discontent was evident on the knights' faces. The wizard's words had hit a sore spot. But beyond the perspective of honor, coming here to find Sir Gerendel was an excessive waste. Perhaps for Sir Karamaf, but knights like Gerendel were plentiful in the emperor's court. And honestly, Gerendel losing contact meant. Sir Gerendel is originally from the empire's south. It wouldn't be strange if he had gone elsewhere. Magic doesn't say so, so just follow orders quietly, will you? Yes. What should I do? I need to go somewhere and have a conversation. If the other party doesn't listen, you might need to come and help. This is why knights are troublesome. Sinerna gestured with her hand across her neck. The knights were horrified. Should we kill them? No. Don't kill. We need to kidnap and take them away. Can you do that? Surely you can. Though more difficult, the knights nodded. It was dishonorable and following the wizard's order, but not impossible. They were capable. Sneaking out of the city could be done by seeking help from the emperor's forces within the city. Once they revealed their identity, they would surely be assisted. Geoffrey checked once, and the maid checked again, but Johann still examined his appearance one more time. One of the virtues a knight should have, surprisingly, was fashion. How stylishly one dressed could sometimes influence their reputation. Of course, Johann wasn't doing this to visit any lady or maiden. Suetlug said disdainfully. You can go comfortably. Please wait a moment. I'm nervous about meeting the wizard. All right. Let's go. Johann turned and set out for the city streets with Suetlug. Suetlug quietly watched the mercenaries following behind. Being cautious isn't bad, but isn't this a bit too much? They couldn't be heavily armed in the city, but the mercenaries skillfully carried their weapons. Besides the swords at their waists, there were certainly more hidden. The friend in visiting isn't the type to enjoy a crowd of people coming over. Well, wait outside. Of course, inconspicuously. The experienced mercenaries knew how to disperse and wait discreetly nearby. Suetlug nodded. Well, that should be fine. Crossing several city districts and entering an area where guilds gathered, Suetlug suddenly entered a stable next to a building. Johann was puzzled. Suetlug had insisted on walking instead of riding. But why go to a stable? Inside the stable, there was a loud snorting sound. Among the horses, a hairy man was lying down, asleep. He was wrapped in some strange leather, which made him look even more like a wild man. Gulrak! Wake up! There was no answer. Suetlug pointed to a dirty wooden barrel beside him. The water in it was not clean either. Splash it! A magic to sober up, I see. Stop the strange jokes. Along with a curse, the man stood up. Muttering something unintelligible, he looked at Suetlug. What kind of motherfucker? Can a guest come and splash water on the host? I was the one who splashed the water. And who are you? Johann of the Yates family. A knight? I didn't know Suetlug kept company with knights. Gulrak wiped his face with leather and then walked out of the stable, heading to the side. The building, looking like a storeroom, was filled with all sorts of things. Gulrak roughly made a space and sat down by himself. Suetlug coughed meaninglessly. Shouldn't you be hosting your guest? I'll host if I recognize you as a guest. Haven't done that yet. What brings you here? Came for the help of a talented wizard. Gulrak snorted. Knowing Suetlug's personality, it sounded unbelievable. Wizards often thought they were the smartest in the world. To be hosted in a wizard's home, you know what you must do. Ready for the test? It was an old tradition for those visiting a wizard to pass a test to receive hospitality. Hearing this, Johann remembered the chess game he had with Suetlug. Was the chess game a test? No. That was just something I enjoy. It wasn't my home anyway. Ah. Will you receive it, or refuse it? Is it really necessary? An old friend comes visiting and you bring up old customs. All right. I'll accept it. Gulrak grumbled but didn't back down. It seemed he wanted to bring Suetlug down a notch, finding him irritating. Johann asked quietly. What is the test? A test you'll like. Suetlug, responding to Johann, said reluctantly. Well, can't help it then. Go on, try it with the knight here. Suetlug. Aren't you going to do it? That's shameless. How could I do such a thing? Isn't it shameless to pass it off to a knight? Sometimes, a wound to honor hurts more than a physical wound. Despite his words, Gulrak rolled up his sleeves and approached. He thought whether it was to embarrass the man Suetlug brought or Suetlug himself, it was the same. Johann asked. So, what is the test? It's something a knight should know well. Just grab each other and the one who falls loses. Simple, isn't it? Oh. A simple test of brute strength. Johann looked at Suetlug, who nodded with a pleased expression. It seemed he had been looking forward to this day. Gulrak, oblivious, urged them on with an innocent expression. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. Don't worry, he'll make sure no one gets hurt. Well, all right. Let's do it. Johann stepped forward and grabbed Gulrak's arm. Gulrak also grabbed Johann's arm. Gulrak clicked his tongue. If Suetlug was the philosopher of the Ipel River, then Gulrak was the wild man of the Black Forest. He was enchanted by the mysteries of the forest's nature and beasts and had inherited their power. He was especially close to bears and could somewhat harness their strength. Challenging Gulrak to a test of strength was almost like challenging a bear. Knowing this, Suitlug must have passed the defeat onto this poor young knight. Shall I start? As you wish. All right. Then begin. Gulrak was baffled. The knight in front of him didn't move an inch. His face turned red with effort and veins bulged, but Johann remained motionless. Suitlug burst out laughing on the side. It was then that Gulrak realized he had been tricked. Chapter 71.1. Johann. Finish it. Johann slightly bowed his head in apology and exerted his strength. Gulrak felt his body lift off the ground and was shocked. What? WTF? Sorry about that. Where did you find this bear-like guy? Gulrak, who had fallen, protested to Suitlug. Suitlug avoided his gaze, pretending not to hear. Gulrak got up and dusted himself off. Then he had a look of realization. Marcel's troll slayer. Yes. Such a cowardly and cunning old man. Bring out a chair. You need to treat your guests. Gulrak slapped his knee. He should have taken the rumors more seriously when he heard them. Although Gulrak grumbled continuously, he did not go back on his word. Suitlug and Johann were allowed to sit as guests. You smell like a wolf. What have you been doing? My wolf is outside. You can talk freely, since you're a guest. So do you plan on calling your wolf? Yes. Can I see it? If it's okay with you. When Johann called, Karamaf walked out of the stable. Gulrak was surprised at the sight of the large wolf. Such a size was uncommon. Amazing! A wolf like this. Karamaf growled, a sign of warning not to provoke him. Gulrak understood immediately and stopped. How did you become friendly? I'd just acted friendly. It followed me. Gulrak was really surprised at this and looked at Johann. But Johann did not seem to be lying. Clearly, it's the magic of the forest. Don't just attach magic to anything. What magic in such a gloomy place? Don't listen to that sly old man. The forest is the place that truly holds mysteries. The sacred darkness that has been passed down since ancient times covers the forest. The river is it's just a river. I saw sailors peeing in it yesterday. Do you think people don't urinate in the forest? Ignoring Suitlug's words, Gulrak spoke. Monsters are one of the forest's mysteries. If such a mystery follows you, it must be because of the greater mystery sleeping in your blood and soul. Gulrak explained that he could hear and understand the words of all kinds of animals in the forest and speak to them. This was because Gulrak had embraced the secrets and mysteries of the forest. Does any of your ancestors have a story related to wolves? It doesn't seem so. Then it might be innate. Love from the forest, a wonderful gift from the gods. Though not by blood, Johann felt there was something about his soul. His soul was one of the greatest mysteries. If there's nothing more to say about wolves, let's end it there. You're here for a reason. This friend is hard to see in the city except in winter. Pointing at Gulrak, Suitlug said. Do you only stay in the city during winter? Because of some magical reason? No. It's cold in winter. Anyway, why did you come? I've come to share the mysteries I've gathered on my travels with you. Suitlug, along with his words, laid out a purple cloth-wrapped fire goblet and the diaries held by Nara's followers. One is a magical tool from the ancient empire era, and the other is a book filled with mysteries about shadows and fire. What do you want? This night and I are heading to Duke Brudu's territory. As you know, the east of the empire is a rough place. Even though the empire had forests, mountains, and unexplored territories, they couldn't compare to the east. Tribes rejecting the empire and monotheism, attacking pioneers, nobles continuing the legacy of ancient kingdoms in the area, vassals of the Eastern Empire boasting of their ancient empire lineage. The eastern part of the empire was a land of wild and turbulent savagery. So, hand over some leather. Leather? The skins that fellow has are not only of good quality but also imbued with magical power. Gulrak, who lived in the forest and communicated with animals, could obtain better quality skins than any hunter. It must hold warmth to fend off the cold, and be tough enough to resist spear and sword. I didn't say I'd give it. So, you're not interested? Gulrak had many skins, but not the one Suitlug had. Gulrak, with a greedy expression, scratched his beard and asked. So where did you get this magical tool? I can disclose that. Can I open it? Do as you please. Gulrak, removing the cloth, was astonished. This is a fire goblet. Yes. Thought you'd like it. Looks handy for the forest, doesn't it? Wait. Fire goblets are usually used in pairs. Couldn't find the other one. Maybe you could try looking for it. Gulrak's expression turned very suspicious. Chapter 71.2. Synonym. Could you tell us who we should bring now? Why? We have sworn to follow Synonym's orders, but we also have our honor. We think we need to know who we are to bring. If I don't tell you, are you going to disobey my orders? Sinona chuckled and said, It's a joke. Can't I even make a joke? The one we're going to bring now is a wizard. Ah. The knights were relieved. It was much more comfortable to abduct a wizard than a noble. Of course, a wizard was still an uneasy adversary. The one leading them was also a wizard. That was acceptable. The one we are seeking is skilled in forests and beasts. He will help us find Gerendel. Indeed. I see. The knights were both convinced and surprised by the wizard's words. It seemed even Sinona couldn't do everything. When they saw her in the emperor's court, she seemed to know everything. Let's hear the plan. The knights had already made contact with people of the emperor's side and bribed those they needed to. From the night watchman they would meet after evening to the gate guards they would pass after daybreak. Since the target was not a person of great status or a noble family, it was much more comfortable. When Sinona gives the signal, the knights will rush in, subdue the wizard, and drag him away, then move to the accommodation in the darkness of night and wait until dawn. That would be a success. It would be good if it can be resolved through conversation. Do you feel a bit reluctant to use force against another wizard? One of the knights asked. They wondered if Sinona, who seemed distant from human emotions, without blood or tears, could have such feelings. They actually hoped she did. The unknown is always frightening. The knight still found the wizard Sinona difficult to understand. No. That wizard is powerful. Synonym. No matter how powerful a wizard is. Is there anyone here who can fight a bear with bare hands and win? The knights were baffled by the unexpected question. Who would fight a bear with bare hands? None? Then you'd better be prepared to fight without being careless. That wizard has the strength of a bear. Maybe he can even turn into a bear in the forest. Sinona's words were absurd, but the knights had no choice but to accept them. She often spoke ambiguously, but she wouldn't lie in such a situation. Beating him up a bit is fine, so don't hesitate to swing your clubs. Just don't use a sword. Yes. After finishing the conversation, Sinona, looking tired, bit a long cigarette holder. The cigarette holder lit up without being set on fire. The knights were frightened by this sight. Suitlig once told Johann, wizards' conversations are probably less interesting than you think. That statement was wrong. The wizard's conversation was indeed far less interesting than imagined. As they kept discussing the same topic for hours, like where they found this journal and the fire goblet, Johann lay down on Karamov, who growled in response. Let's take a break. Karamov turned his head, indicating the door. Gulrak noticed and looked in the same direction. Seems like we have a visitor. Does anyone else visit you besides me? That's a good question. Gulrak swept away the dirty hair. Unlike Suitg, who is respected as a philosopher of the Ipel River, Gulrak was much more unsociable. In the city, most people didn't know him. Stay inside for a bit. A guest should be treated well. Will it be the same test? Quiet, and go inside. Gulrak pushed two people and a wolf inside and then opened the door. Ho. Just as the visitor realized Gulrak was a wizard, Gulrak also recognized the visitor as a wizard. I've seen you before. The wild man from the dark forest, Gulrak, right? And who might you be? A court wizard of the emperor. Sinona Gong? I'm flattered you remember my name. May I come in? Sinona didn't wait for an answer and stepped inside. Before Gulrak could react, he had moved aside. What brings the emperor's court wizard here? I need a favor. I have to find someone, and that's not my specialty. I need your help. You won't refuse, will you? I refuse. Gulrak frowned. He had heard of Sinona, a wizard dealing with all sorts of secrets at the emperor's court. But Gulrak was a wizard of the same mystery. He wasn't naive enough to be overawed by the visitor's authority and position. Why refuse? I have no interest in honor, and even less in the emperor's wealth. I'm not a dog that follows orders. You're misunderstanding. It's just a favor. All the more reason for me to refuse. I don't usually grant favors. Refusing a guest's request? You're not my guest. I haven't accepted you as one. Sinurna snorted at Gulrak's firm reply. Then how does one get treated as a guest? Pass the test. Sinurna chuckled. Is it a test of strength? Gulrak's face reddened with embarrassment. Only offering a test you can win is cowardly for a wizard. Has anyone ever passed it? Yes. Sinurna's face showed surprise for the first time. Gulrak felt oddly proud. He didn't expect his deception with Suilk today to turn out this way. Really? That's surprising. Anyway, I don't plan to pass that test. Will you really refuse my request? Indeed. Well, can't be helped then. Sinurna stood up and opened the door as if to leave. But through the open door, masked figures entered. Subdue him. Sinurna. How dare you as a guest? It's you who didn't treat me as a guest, isn't it? Gulrak growled in anger. His fur seemed to bristle like chestnuts. Even the knights who had been inwardly dismissing the wizard flinched. I swear on the name of the Dark Forest, he'll break the necks of all who dare attack. Such dishonorable wretches. Subdue him. The knights, feeling provoked, charged. Unarmored and holding only a well-crafted club, it was enough to subdue a wizard unfamiliar with fighting. The door burst open, and Johann emerged from the inside. Johann and Suitlik, who had been listening from behind, were shocked by the real situation unfolding in front of them. Ah. What? The knights hesitated after hitting Gulrak a few times, startled by the sudden appearance. Johann drew his sword. He had no intention of fighting the same way as the one with the club. Wait. Wait. Before he could finish speaking, the head of the knight in front flew off. Chapter 72.1. As blood splattered in all directions, a look of horror and fury swirled in the knight's eyes. None of the knights who had entered here had come prepared to risk their lives. It was supposed to be a simple kidnapping of a wizard. They thought it would be over as soon as they overpowered any resistance. But suddenly, they were embroiled in this bloody drama. Who are you? Do you know who we are? Aren't you just some thugs trying to kidnap someone while wearing masks? The knight who had spoken habitually blushed at Johann's words, feeling ashamed. Sinurna, noticing this emotion, clicked her tongue and said, Why not reveal your family and name and challenge me to a duel? All but the wizard can be killed. Attack! The warehouse was now cramped with people. In such a space, it was hard to showcase refined skills. It was all about brute strength and endurance. Even though Johann was armed, the knights were numerous. In this situation, there was little difference between a club and a longsword. One good hit could bring anyone down. Thinking this, the knights charged, swinging their clubs. Johann broke a knight's club with a swing of his fist, his eyes widening in disbelief. Johann then grabbed the knight's throat, breaking his neck with a snap. Cough! He positioned the knight as a shield and, with his other hand, wielded a longsword. A barrage of club strikes poured in from the side. Johann swung his sword. Blood splattered, and another knight fell. Humans created techniques to combat wild beasts. The knights, having forgotten this, were paying dearly for recklessly attacking the beast with brute force. Yet, one of the knights managed to swing a club at Johann's exposed back. Johann clenched his teeth, turned around, and shattered the skull of the knight. Even a well-trained knight was no use. The knight collapsed, vomiting blood from a single punch. Retreat. Protect me. The first to regain her composure in this chaos was Sinurna. She watched, as if entranced, Johann exerting immense strength to break a club, before finally snapping back to reality. It was unbelievable that several knights couldn't handle one man, but believing the unbelievable was the role of a wizard. She bit her lip and prepared to retreat. Fortunately, Johann, busy slaughtering the knights, didn't notice her escaping through the door. Don't move. He'll shoot if you do. Get on your knees. Surprisingly, there was an ambush. Outside the warehouse, mercenaries with bows and crossbows waited in ambush. Johann's mercenaries. Mercenaries brought in case of an attack in the city were unexpectedly proving useful in a different way. Realizing they were ambushed, the knights were horrified. How dare these insignificant mercenaries? Wait! Sinurna tried to stop them. With her nearby, any rash action. But the knights were already charging. Their brave assault in such a situation was characteristic of knights. The problem was that they were not even wearing armor, just plain clothes. Crossbows and bows were fired, and arrows stuck into the bodies of the knights. Even in such a state, the knights rushed in, gritting their teeth. It was indeed an astonishing momentum. The mercenaries had a look of horror on their faces. But they were also experienced and skilled mercenaries. The response was immediate. Crossbowmen, archers, fall back. Raise the shields. Block them. The knights, pierced by arrows, couldn't fight properly. They dropped their clubs and fell. I said I surrender? Sinurna spoke with a calm demeanor. Soon, the door opened from behind and Johann emerged. No voice of a knight was heard from inside. Bring her in. I thought she was an assassin sent by the emperor. Didn't I say? Why would the emperor engage in such acts for no reason? Johann assessed the situation and felt futile. They had come not specifically for him but to abduct Gulrak. Gulrak asked Johann. I owe you one. Thank you. It's only what a knight should do. Suitl inwardly admired. Gulrak, not knowing Johann for long, was unaware of his true feelings. All knights except Sinurna resisted and died. Sinurna answered questions with a very polite and submissive attitude. Why did you try to kidnap Gulrak? We were looking for a knight and needed that wizard's help. Are these the emperor's knights? Yes. Does the emperor know about this? I don't know. Johann stood behind Sinurna. Sinurna glanced back, concerned about his position. As expected, Johann was holding up his long sword. Ready to strike in a single blow. Wait a moment. I still have questions. While Suitlig intervened, Gulrak asked curiously. Is it okay to speak so obediently? If I don't, I know you'll torture me. I think it's better to just speak than to be tortured into talking. Why are you looking for the knight? He has my treasure. Is that treasure by any chance the fire goblet? Chapter 72.2. For the first time, Sinurna showed a surprised expression. Answer the question. Yes. Can you talk about the emperor? I can't. Johann casually placed his long sword on Sinurna's shoulder. It was a warning. Sinurna shivered at the chill of the metal. She turned her head to look at Johann. In this warehouse with 3 wizards, only Johann was not a wizard. Sinurna tried to enchant Johann by any means. Red hair, crimson eyes. Despite being covered in a robe, Sinurna was a beautiful woman. Combined with her magical power, enchanting people was not a difficult task. But Johann's eyes did not waver. In his eyes, Sinurna felt the power of a strong soul. Johann's eyes conveyed only one message. The death of Sinurna. Why can't you speak? Probably sworn by mysteries and magic. Unless the emperor is a fool. Even a court wizard couldn't fully earn the emperor's trust. Naturally, he would have sworn her to secrecy. For a wizard, death was preferable to losing magic. So, may I kill her? Do you bear a grudge? No. But there's no good in sparing a wizard. You never know what they might do. Unlike Gulrak and Suitlug, who were well versed in magic, Johann, who was not, couldn't help but be wary. And the best defense was to cut off the opponent's head. A dead wizard can't cast spells. How would you feel if your arms and legs were all tied up? I'd probably secretly untie them and get up, don't you think? I asked the question wrong. What do you think when you see someone with their arms and legs tied up? They don't seem dangerous, right? It's the same with a wizard. Suitlig placed a fire goblet in front of Sinurna, who looked shocked. With just one fire goblet, Sinurna understood everything. We didn't kill Gerendel. We just took care of the remains. Wizards don't usually kill each other. But nothing is absolute. Even the knight here wants to kill you. If you want to live, convince us. Unlike Johann, Suitlig had no intention of killing Sinurna. It was too wasteful to just kill such a talent. A wizard could be trusted. Once they swore an oath, they could never break it. Sensing this, Sinurna sighed and asked, "What do you want?" "You might know, but the Emperor is becoming more violent. We need someone to warn us of danger when our lives are at risk someday. Will you repay the favor if I save you? If it doesn't conflict with my oath, I will grant you 3 requests. You must swear to secrecy about what happened today." "I will do so." Johann listened to the wizard's conversation with a look of wonder. Sinurna showed not an iota of loyalty to the Emperor. "Is this what a wizard is?" Gulrak said beside him. "This woman is peculiar. She doesn't serve the Emperor, she thinks she's trading with him. That's why she acts like this without any hesitation. Suitlig is different, don't misunderstand." "I didn't misunderstand." "Good. Then that's settled." Suitlig and Sinurna's conversation flowed so smoothly, it was like merchants who had come to negotiate from the start. Sinurna will repay Johann by granting him 3 requests for sparing her life today. This will not be disclosed anywhere. After the conversation, Sinurna discarded her polite demeanor and returned to her arrogant and languid attitude, assured of her life safety. "May your path, brave Sir Knight, be filled with pain and glory." Johann immediately drew his longsword to strike Sinurna. She screamed and ducked. Suitlig, taken aback, intervened. "What are you doing? Isn't that a curse?" "No. It's just a greeting." "Sorry about that. Thought it was a curse." Sinurna glared at Johann and then rode away on her horse. Gulrak was a wizard who, despite his crude way of speaking, expressed his gratitude sincerely. He took out a surcoat made of the finest leather and personally draped it over Johann's shoulders. The surcoat, worn over armor, was the best garment for knights to display their family pride and style. The smooth leather surcoat, swirling with dark red hues, possessed a dignity that any knight would admire. "This leather will protect you from the cold, and from things like moisture and arrows." Suitlig was amazed by the surcoat. Gulrak, despite his large build, was known for being stingy. It was unlike him to give away such a treasure so easily. It was clear that Johann liked it very much. "Come visit my house when you're in the forest." "How should I find it?" "Just ask a wolf, and they will lead you there. Be careful, the east is a wild place." After the conversation, Gulrak picked up a piece of leather and threw it at Suitlig. The leather, seemingly unprocessed and unstitched, left Suitlig bewildered. "Really? Wrap yourself in it. It'll keep you warm if you sleep under it. If you're giving me something, at least make it decent. I have repaid my debt. And Suitlig, if you intended to give me the fire goblet with such a story, you should appreciate this leather too. I didn't know that wizard would come for the fire goblet. In giving this because of that. Otherwise, you would have gotten nothing." Gulrak slammed the door harshly. Suitlig, grumbling, wrapped himself in the leather. It definitely felt magical, despite its foul smell. "You have a good friend. It's much better to befriend than a wizard like Sinurna. Don't think too poorly of me for sparing Sinurna's life. It's more beneficial to keep someone alive, even if they are hard to trust, than to kill them. I don't think poorly of it." Right. I worried over nothing." Johann had said that because he tended to draw his sword at the sight of wizards, but it turned out to be an unnecessary worry. "We will keep this fire goblet. It's better to have a way to contact." Johann accepted the fire goblet. It was a bit awkward since Sinurna could contact him, but he couldn't do the same. It's surprising that a court wizard has no loyalty. Do you know why Sinurna gave the fire goblet to Gerendel? She must have bribed him. If she found the remains of Karamaf, she planned to steal Karamaf's sword and other treasures. It's a treasure worth such a scheme. To steal treasures without reporting to the Emperor. It's not just a lack of loyalty. To her, everything must be a transaction. The Emperor might think differently, but what can be done about it? If someone is deceived, it's their own fault. You might see more wizards in the future, but don't treat them like knights. You'll be betrayed. Loyalty is a difficult virtue to expect from wizards. But friendship can still be hoped for, right? Suitlig nodded and smiled at Johann's words. Yes. Friendship is indeed a virtue worth hoping for.